You're now listening to Smart People You Meet at Parties, a podcast from Entrepreneur First, the world's leading talent investor. My name is Bernadette. I'm the General Manager of Entrepreneur First Singapore, and I'm privileged to speak with some of the sharpest minds in Southeast Asia's startup ecosystem. This podcast gives you a behind-the-scenes listen into the everyday conversations we have at EF with founders, investors, and thought leaders. Today, we're joined by Gwendolyn Regina on becoming a first-time founder. Gwen has spent 15 years across media and technology startups across Asia, Paris, and Silicon Valley. She's currently building up a new venture capital engagement program at Facebook and was previously an entrepreneur in residence at Entrepreneur First. These days, Gwen also spends her time at On Questions, exploring the question, what is a good question? Previously a founder herself, Gwen built and sold tech media startup SG Entrepreneurs to Tech in Asia. She was also a founding team member of Thymos Capital, an early-stage tech investment firm here in Singapore, and she spearheaded Mashable's expansion into Asia. Gwen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Gwen, you've taken a pretty interesting route. You started as a founder yourself, then joined Tech in Asia as part of the acquisition, then Mashable, then EF, and now Facebook. Most people, myself included, start at big companies and go a little bit smaller. What made your journey different? How did you plan for this?
Assuming it was planned, Bernie, I would say short line answer is that I've been charting my journey with kind of large goals in mind and driven a lot by my own curiosity and where I thought my strengths led to as well. So I didn't really kind of plan the entire journey. So for me, when I was really young already, I had already started playing with tech and innovation and started dabbling my hands, because for me it's always like looking to the future and how tech will change society, how we live day to day, how can we change not just a day to day but also kind of larger kind of macro societal factors. For me, I've always been an interest in at first I was very young, was astronomy and physics. So it's always like what's out there in the universe. So a lot of it's like, where would physics lead us to? So when come bring back the question, the larger metaphysical question or philosophical question, or the edge of science, and bring it down to kind of more real time as technology. I've always been interested in how companies are created, how products are created to do this step-by-step kind of innovation that then gradually leads to that kind of paradigm shifts across society. So when I started, I guess, I did one thing because I was interested in it. So going back then, back to like 2005, I started SG Entrepreneurs because I saw that the traditional media in Singapore and Southeast Asia were not covering startups. And
Right.
for me, I've always been interested in, again, startups and innovation. So I was like, when we're a young company, this is when it's most crucial for you to be in front of potential customers and investors if it's the right time for you. So I started writing about it, and I thought there were a lot of hidden stories around, a lot of like entrepreneurs and developers doing cool things. So I started writing, and that just led on to all that journey you mentioned. And I won't go repeating what you just said. It was a really good intro. Thank you so much, Bernie. But yeah, so I didn't plan it, and it's been just really, I really enjoyed my journey, and it's been a great ride.
I'd love to hear a little bit more, Gwen, how you found yourself in the role at Facebook and what you're doing there. It sounds like a pioneering role, which is very similar to, I guess, a lot of the other roles you've had. And tell us more.
Yeah, thanks. So my role at Facebook now is to build Facebook up to be a better support pillar of startups and VCs in the region, especially from a growth marketing perspective. Because we know that as the internet economy really grows, Facebook is a large driver of that. We're a large player in the economy. So what does this mean on a day-to-day basis really is I'm talking to VCs, I'm talking to startups. I want to identify the next future unicorn. I want to identify promising high growth companies, high growth startups, and accelerate them with resources from Facebook. So to be clear though, just because in my title, venture capital is in the title, so it's a bit confusing. But my role is not about accelerating, not about investing money for equity. Just to be clear for now, at least, it's really about accelerating with resources that Facebook will love to kind of provide, with account manager, with other kinds of resources to accelerate the growth of the startup. And
Makes
I
sense.
guess your question is like, how did I come to the role or something, right? As well, your second question.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about that. Facebook is obviously a global juggernaut, and you've been a startup founder, an advisor, a mentor. How did you arrive at this point?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I guess when you said it's pioneering, for me, this role was super interesting because it is pioneering. So it is entrepreneurship, so to speak. So I'm the only one in APAC right now, and it's so new. So there's nothing. I mean, when I joined 8 months ago, there was nothing. So there was some movements by some of my colleagues, but really there wasn't like a person to focus full time on bringing this whole kind of VC engagement, startup engagement to life. So it was interesting because I have to build a lot of things internally, navigate kind of what do we have, what resources do Facebook have, what can I bring to bear, what can I bring together such that I can really again build Facebook to be better support pillar, and really do and identifying the right startups well and accelerating them again. So it's been a ride because it's entrepreneurship, and it's something that fits me to a T, I would like to believe.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's great, Gwen. I think you've had really interesting, you've been on kind of all sides of the table. You've been entrepreneur, you've been an advisor, and you're also an investor. How has each of those roles shaped your view on, I think, what is still a very nascent but exciting Southeast Asian ecosystem?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think one of the I do have had worn several hats, and each hat I would say plays a very important and different part of the ecosystem, right? So I think as an ex-founder or as an entrepreneurial spirit, I think that's very important in giving me more empathy when talking to startups these days,
Yeah.
because I've run my own thing. I mean, it was much smaller than all the other companies today, right? But I think having had that startup experience, having had an exit experience, having had operational experience, really allows me to understand the day to day. Managing cash flow. I always say it, but managing the receivables on paper, right? By cash flow, the money was in the bank. So how about managing that balance, so that you can pay your team, and pay suppliers if you need to. So all of that gives me the kind of empathy I think that is necessary into that lends to my other roles as an advisor, as an angel investor, where having run the journey again, I can then go zoom in to that again day to day, but at the same time zoom out, right? Because as an advisor, as an angel investor, you're not implicated in day to day. You shouldn't be, and you shouldn't have to, right? Your role is to kind of, if you can add value, is to really look at it from a macro perspective, kind of see, big challenges that might arise, and perhaps guide if you can, the companies into certain directions. But I'll always say I've only run my own journey, and I haven't, built a unicorn, for example. So I bring to the table what I have, and I trust myself. I believe in my own experience. But whatever advice, quote unquote, is really just what I think. It's really the entrepreneur that has to run the marathon, right? And so I
Absolutely.
think, so I think for me in the other roles as advisor slash angel investor is really about asking questions of the entrepreneurs, because I don't really believe in being prescriptive about like, hey, I think this is the right way. I don't think you should be. Yeah.
Gwen, the theme of the podcast is becoming a first time founder. And I'd be curious to hear, you sound like the dream angel investor to have on the cap table. What do you advise founders to look for in their angel investors? And what are actually the warning signs that someone shouldn't be one of your angel investors?
I love those questions. I would say be very clear what you need to grow your business. If you look at it, you and your team, what do you lack, right? So look at it really holistically. Are you lacking in technical skill sets, business development skill sets, or whatever you have? Or is it really just money that you need?
Right.
Okay, that could be one. Or,
Mhm.
do you think that you're lacking certain domain expertise, right? So depending on what you think you need, then you can go out to the market and figure out what kind of people, what kind of resources can you bring to bear to complement what you have. So if you do need just pure money, if you really just believe your team is, or your whatever you have is super strong, great. Then you can raise money, and to a certain extent, then you don't care where the money comes from. I
Mhm.
do think that's rarely the case though, because to finish that point is that I think even if you feel like you have all the elements required to build a successful company, it is always helpful to have experienced people in with different backgrounds and experiences that can give us different eye, and
Right.
that's where advices come in. So yeah, so when it comes to angel investments, I think angel investors is a bit of a different breed, right? Because angel investors, again, by definition, usually work a bit more solo or with some friends. Like, for example, me and my friends do deals together. So we
Uh-huh.
combine our brains and our
Mhm.
resources together. I think warning signs would be if, frankly, I think they're just too eager to throw money at you.
Interesting.
Because at least for me, I mean, I don't have a lot of resources to throw. Some people with like large zeros in their bank, they can afford to just invest in anything, and that's fine for them.
Mhm.
But for me, I think it's always great to have investors on your cap table who really truly believe in your vision and believe in you, right? You don't want something down the line where a shareholder, and could be an angel investor or a VC, with whom you have severe disagreements, and when it comes down to a big major decision that the company has to make, and that you're gonna butt heads. But having said that, it's not just about having people on board who just believe with you, believe in your side all the way. You do need contrary opinions, right? But if when I come back to the point about, I think if someone's too eager to throw money at you, I will question that, because I feel like everyone, even again, you have like a large pool of funds to invest from, it should be a bit more thoughtful, right?
Right.
If not, then it's just gambling for the investor. And
Mhm.
if you look at it that way, if an investor is gambling only, that is really a gambler talking. A gambler talking, if you extrapolate kind of the characteristics of a gambler, there's some maybe not so savory kind of characteristics there, in terms of like forcing you to sell out early if, let's say, there's a big potential acquisition, a big conversation that would give the investor like high return immediately, but it doesn't work well for your business, right? But it will give the person return. So I think it's important to really be aligned on some values as well, and just really believing that the person will be is in your corner.
Yeah. Yeah. Gwen, I mean, hearing you talk about how they're in their corner, I don't know if you took angel investment in your startup, but I'd love to hear how you stress tested that and how you thought about what that right balance is of somebody who is in your corner, but also isn't afraid to give you the hard conversation when you need it. How do you work that out?
For me, for SG entrepreneurs, it was really a hobby turn a company. So
Mhm.
there were some people who wanted to angel invest, and I talked to them, and some of the values were aligned, but I wasn't sure basically whether the final visions aligned. So basically I said no. Yeah, so that was me. When it comes down to your second question about stress testing it, I think that's a great question. I think for myself, with that 15 years or whatever now of having been in the space, talking my own experience, but also talking to a lot of people, I think I've honed that, I guess, my opinions over time, and that and yeah, strong opinions, I guess, over time.
Yeah.
Stress testing, it's a good question. I don't know whether honestly I have a good answer to that, because I personally haven't been in the founder seat of raising again funds to stress test like kind of different variables and different investors. I could only say it from the other side of the fence as an angel investor, where I've spoken to companies, and that's my style, which is I try to tell them like, hey, it's a two-way conversation, it's two-way choosing.
Mhm.
I appreciate you coming to me and giving me your deck and sharing your journey and insights and where you think the market is going and XYZ,
Yeah.
opening up basically your books essentially, and so you're inviting me to be an investor, but at the same time I'm also inviting you to be part of my journey, right? It's a two-way choice. So for me, that's extremely important. So I always say again, that if you think I can be helpful, and how do you think I can be helpful? Because I would like to believe, I would like to add value in the long run at some point. So of course, in most cases, again, the entrepreneur, the CEO should be the experts, right? If I'm the domain expert in that startup, if I know more about a company than they do, then that's a big red flag for me as an angel investor, and it's a no-go. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very interesting litmus test, Gwen. I mean, coming back to your experience as a founder, I'm sure a lot of this has shaped the way you think about things as well. What do you feel are the three questions any entrepreneur should ask themselves before embarking onto this journey? And I've been a passenger on these journeys. I've served as a chief of staff before to two of the wonderful startups here, Grab and funding societies, and now at EF working with founders. And it is a journey of sacrifice. It is incredibly challenging. So, what are the kinds of questions you think that founders should ask themselves before starting the journey?
Yeah, I love the question. Thank you so much. Okay, before starting the journey. Okay. I would say kind of the first question is understanding where is your curiosity leading you right now? Why are you even just so related to that? So sub question. Why are you interested in this entrepreneur journey, right? Which
Mhm.
part of that curiosity is it? Because you see again in the papers and media that it's glamorous, quote unquote, or is there really a problem or a challenge that you're really itching to solve, or is it money? Is it or just following your friends, for example, right? So what is your curiosity, and where is that leading you to? Because I think it needs to be authentic to yourself. If you're doing it, quote unquote, for the wrong reasons, it will not last,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I think because entrepreneurship is made out of a lot of ups and downs, and the downs are really downs. And more importantly, the downs is are downs that you haven't experienced before, and by definition of not having been an entrepreneur. And so you don't know how low was the low.
Mhm.
So that leads to the second question, which is that what pain are you willing to endure?
Yeah.
So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be aware that there are many unknowns in being an entrepreneur, and again, unknowns related to also to your personal journey, your personal emotional journey, your own psychological journey, which is super important, right? Because to really grow a company is not just the fact that you can build a team, you can build a processes, scale. It's really also about how you, as the founder or founding team slash CEO, managing yourself, because you're gonna feel alone a lot of times, right? And how you manage yourself, giving yourself enough breaks actually is super important as well, in terms of kind of going it bring this to the long, right, going this towards the end. I think kind of third and last question before they start the journey would be I'll zoom out kind of macro picture, which is that are your goals the right goals, right? So maybe so maybe this might link a little bit to my first question. So I didn't really structure that super 1, 2, 3. But are your goals the right goals? Because when you bring it down to the problem in front of you, or let's say before joining EF, right?
Mhm.
It's again, what are you trying to achieve with this entrepreneurial journey, right? Is it, again, back linking to the first question again, is it you're hoping to change the world and you're hoping to do it in 10 years, or are you hoping to do it in 5 years, right? Again, what is driving you? Because um, you need to really understand whether the right goals, these goals might change for you personally, because people change, right?
Absolutely.
And you will change, and maybe you start this entrepreneurial journey, and 1 year down the line you're like, I'm suffering quite a bit, um I thought I was solving this problem, but actually I realized that this problem is not validated. I need to switch and pivot, and switch a solution. But now this new solution is targeting an industry I have absolutely zero interest in, right?
Right.
But the whole point about a startup is that you need to pivot to find a market. And if your goal was to solve a problem, say um, in some sort of water, like water scarcity, right? Let's say that's your goal, right? And that is great, right? But you need to realize that if you cannot find a proper market there, you may have that goal, but then the startup might require you to change kind of the whole market again, and so then you will not be able to attain your original goal. So are your goals the right goals? Is kind of just being more meta about it, and realizing that your goal should be rightly to you, should be right to you.
I really resonate with that, Gwen. I think one of the things I talk a lot with founders about in EF is it's not so much do you have value alignment with your co-founder. It's, what are the trade-offs you're willing to make? What are the pains you're willing to suffer? I think values are really great for peacetime, and I think trade-offs are really great for wartime. What are the things you're willing to suffer? No one builds a company and says, I'm happy, I want to be unprofitable, but I want my people to be happy. But when it comes down to it, what are you going to choose? And there is no right answer. There is no right answer to say I would choose product over customers, or I would choose customers over my team, or my team over my product. There is no right answer, but there's, I think, an aligned and a misaligned way to build a business.
I
And so,
love that, Bernie. Yeah, I love that. And to
I
add
think
on to
people
that
should
as well,
talk
I
about
think more about what? Sorry.
pain. I think people should talk
Pain,
about
yeah.
what pain they're willing to suffer.
Yeah, and I would add to that and kind of bring it to a slightly different tack now is also that it's also about focus and prioritization. So I always say, when you build a company, before you build a company, and when you're building a company, it's really knowing what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So it's, in a sense, you have to prioritize what you cherish and what you think are absolutely not necessary. So it's I guess to some extent similar, and kind of again riffing off what you just said, right? So which means that, for example, if customer experience, again bidding product and customer experience, maybe customer experience is a not to focus on, at the beginning, right? And so that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. So I would say, so zooming out in a larger macro point is that knowing what to focus on and what not to focus on is very important, because in a startup there's always going to be 10 and a million things to do. So you don't want to be pulled into all the different things. You cannot solve all problems. You need to be comfortable with that. You're here trying to build like one thing, that you hope that would make it really big and serve a lot of people. So knowing what you're not going to do is super important.
Absolutely. Gwen, I know we're running right up on time, so I'd like to just ask you one last question. To you, what defines an entrepreneur?
Ooh, tough one. Okay. What defines an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is someone who is always on a path of self-discovery and is always willing to let his or her curiosity lead him or her. Comma, I have a lot of commas in my sentence.
Great.
And to push yourself to always make the circle bigger, to always push yourself to 10x whatever you're thinking and 10x whatever you're hoping to do. Super long comment sentence, but yeah, Bernie.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining us and being our first guest on the second season of Spy Maps, Gwen. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I hope to see you very soon. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode and are interested in founding your own company, apply via joinef.com. We'll help you find a co-founder, develop an idea, and launch your company from scratch. And most of all, we'll invest in you from day one. Applications are now open for our cohorts in Singapore, Bangalore, London, Paris, Berlin, and Toronto. To listen to more episodes of Spy Maps, visit joinef.com. Thanks for listening.